Right,
Wow.
welcome.
What a, sure is a great first of April.
Clickbaited.
Yeah, it's actually Placebo 2. We're gonna do an hour-long analysis. Probably not an hour long. We're gonna do a frame-by-frame analysis of Placebo.
Well,
Shall we begin, everybody?
this is what I'm for. I believe we should.
I've slowed it down so you can go properly frame by frame.
Straight away, to begin with, you can hear the clock ticking immediately.
Yeah, I'll speed that up a
Joel's
little
the
bit.
director, what-
So I'll speed
What's
that
your
up a little
intent?
bit so you can hear that better. My intent with the clicking, it was kind of meant to... It's meant to build kind of a bit of anticipation, I feel like. You know, you associate a ticking clock with, like, the passage of time, and, you know, it's all incredible. The film has a lot of an air of tension around it.
Of course.
And now we're on to the
That
name.
makes sense. Placebo, yes.
See,
As you know, placebo, kind of like a... it's a word for, like drugs.
No, it
Not
refers
drugs,
to
but
refers to a medicine.
Word for drugs.
It refers to a medicine
Medicine, not-
that has an effect on someone despite having no medicinal value. So it would be like a sugar.
Yeah.
Say if you took like a sugar, like normally made up of sugar. Take a sugar pill, and you're told it's an antibiotic. Supposedly, if it's a placebo, it will still have the same effect on you. And the idea behind the name
Yes.
was that because you know there isn't a murderer, but they're all anticipating as if there is. It's almost as if you know the murders themselves are almost a placebo effect.
Exactly. All makes sense.
Okay, now the wine glass
Alright.
here. This is quite an interesting factor. I think it's quite good at showing Walt Solis's character, in terms of him being kind of a large businessman. You know, a nice wine glass. I feel like it's quite emblematic of his status.
And does the fact that it's empty foreshadow that he's gonna die?
But it's also kind of in his name, isn't it? Soulless. It's meant to be.
He has no himself. He's completely sold out to the company.
Yes.
To the point where there's nothing inside of him, just like the glass, expensive, but inside there's nothing.
Yeah.
Ah, I see.
I see.
And you see how
Right.
I think it's
Good
quite.
look at something. Yeah, continue.
I think it's quite interesting here how all of them are looking, but I think Billy Shears is, you know, he's looking away. I think
I
that's
find it quite interesting how in his reflection, Walt Solis's reflection in the mirror, it sort of looks like there's a crack sort of effect over him, over his face.
well,
Yes,
yeah,
I can see that.
Sort of
Yeah, I
looking
can
like
see
he's
that.
gonna die.
yeah, that's good foreshadowing. But yeah,
Yeah,
Billy Shears kind of
okay.
looking away. I think it kind of shows his almost lack of care for the situation because everyone else is kind of looking towards him, but he doesn't care.
Of course, that makes sense.
Oh, come on.
I think that's quite a little interesting bit there. I think that kind of shows almost how Walter Solis is a fraud in himself. That
Yes.
when delivering his speech, he doesn't truly believe in his words.
Yes. Okay. Now seems like a good time to kind of analyze the costume. We can see from the blazer and the
I
hat
would
that
like
he's very clear a business kind of person, like a professional, classy kind of guy. The lack of a tie. I'm not sure exactly what this means, but clearly it must have been intentional for the director's creative process.
Yeah, I suppose it's.
Very-
I suppose it kind of plays into kind of the soullessness of him. I suppose.
Exactly, because it
I'd,
represents
I'd
his soul.
argue that the tie is the soul of an outfit, the soul of a suit, and
Yeah.
without it, he has no job.
Especially when you're wearing a suit, because without a tie, it just looks strange. You could
Yeah.
say.
I feel like a
Exactly.
lot of the kind of the philosophy behind Walter Solis was to kind of show him as very much a half-wit type of person. Though, despite having a lot of status, clearly doesn't have a lot of passion. I think in the words of his monologue, I think as well. So we get onto it.
Exactly. And
Leave this
this
toast to
conjointment
all of you here
also
today.
emulates
This
it,
film means a
with
lot
the
to
grey
me
blazer
and the
the
reverend.
black hat not really going together perfectly in terms of colour.
Yeah.
Them not being the same really fits into this idea.
Yeah.
Positive impact
And the fact he gets cut.
And we can also see he's stumbling on his words.
Yes,
He's stumbling on
because
his words. He's saying what he means to say, but then taking it back. He knows it's not going to make him look good. He wants to look good in front of everyone.
yes, he's trying
Because
to.
otherwise, what's the point?
He's
Your
trying to.
movie's not going to make much money if you look like an asshole.
Yeah, he's trying to put on the idea that it means more than revenue. I think it's also interesting
Exactly.
the fisheye almost lens on here. I think that helps kind of almost display him as. I think it works with kind of display his not madness, but kind of his lack of awareness.
I understand what you mean. Very well crafted, you could say.
Just a second.
Yes.
Thank you, Jack, for your input.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
This will make on the company. I mean, the film landscape brings me such joy.
Also, I think
Repetition. He does it again.
yes, I think also his use of the
That's
term
true.
film landscape, which isn't really a term that's used. I think that also
No one says that. He's not. He doesn't care whatsoever
yeah
about film. He cares about money. He did it for the money.
yeah.
My grandfather, when he started Soulless Pictures,
World
His
building, I
grandfather.
suppose.
His power is built on generational
Nepotism.
He's a nepo baby.
Exactly. Showing even more that he really doesn't care about the quality. He just wants the money.
he always wished we could continue making sequels to his splendid classics.
I think it's there's a bit of a
As we
subtle
know,
commentary.
sequels 90% of the time are purely made to make money, as we know.
I think
And
there's a little bit,
splendid classic.
this was here.
This implies that this. Oh, go on.
I think here is the director, what I was kind of, and the writer as well. This was when a bit of a dig at Disney.
Of course,
making
because
remakes.
obviously meaningless cash grab sequels and remakes.
No way.
That's kind of, you can almost twig that with his name when he's
Like
called
Snow White,
Walter.
exactly.
That's very much meant to be similar to Walt Disney.
Oh well,
well.
yeah, that makes sense.
Well,
Of course,
well,
and
yeah,
obviously, soulless is a representation of the fact that he has no soul.
Yes.
like Mickey Mouse.
So that is why we will live on with our great achievement.
And you can see there, for a little bit of a frame, we'll go back. I can't.
Was that Peter Griffin?
Okay,
Right,
as
go
you can
back.
see there, he puts his glass up kind of half-heartedly. Kind of showing
Yeah.
how he doesn't believe in the whole thing. Well done.
Exactly, and you can also tell by the smirk on his face in that frame.
Yeah, and how it doesn't last for long. They
Expanding on what
don't
you're
care that much about him as well.
No, they clearly see through him and his incredibly obvious name.
Yes.
You'll excuse me, I'm off for some fresh air.
And of course, another
Can we talk
aspect
about
of
the director's cameo?
Exactly. If you would like to remove the subtitles briefly, so we can look through the reflection
Yeah.
of the door, we can see the director's.
Can
The
I
director's
just talk
there.
about what I think
this
my
makes
meaning
it
of this
apparent.
is.
Go on.
All right, please add your input, Jack.
The fact that Joel Bunn was behind the characters, I think it's like, you know, like the saying, he's right behind me, isn't he? But like, there's no actual murderer, so there's no murderer behind him. So he's behind all the characters, which is why he's behind
He's
the murder.
behind all of
They're all
it.
just
That makes
behind
sense.
as part of the Placebo project instead of no actual murderer. You know.
I see what you mean, and I can also see why you haven't added that much in total.
Yeah,
But
no.
yeah, yeah. This clearly wasn't a mistake. This was to show that Joel is in the house. There is another character inside the house. We don't know if his name is Joel. That's just Joel.
I
playing
think
him,
we
as
know.
can
We
see.
kind of. I think it's meant to
Because
kind
maybe
of break the suspension of disbelief. Because I think we'll get onto this later as well. That a lot of this is inherently absurdist, and I think
We
kind of
know-
getting that
we
peek
know-
behind the camera.
Of course, if you're watching this, obviously you would have seen Placebo before. As we know, at one point Billy Shears says the murderer must have gone into the ventilation. What if the character we can see on screen in this reflection right now, he did go into the ventilation, and he actually was there? Because I'm just saying, it could be. He could be the murderer. He
Yeah.
could have been spotted. He could have found out ages ago. I feel like I had something there, but then I just kind of stopped. Here we have a nice little shot of Riley, of Walter Solus, like off center of the frame. Now, centering usually creates balance in terms of framing, so we can see it as kind of like an unease. He is unease to the audience. They know something's off, something's about to happen. So it's kind of like foreshadowing, kind of. Lets the audience know.
I think as well,
Thank you,
framing him
ChatGPT,
alongside
for giving me that.
framing him alongside Bins as well, I think works quite well to kind of show that he is garbage.
Yeah.
I also think it really draws attention to the fact that there's no bin behind that bin in front, and that something's behind it, like lurking. And
Yeah,
it foreshadows the
Yes, yeah.
dangers that he's in.
yeah.
Exactly. You see that cat noise is
I think as well
you can
there,
assume. Yes, go on.
there's a little bit of out of touchness again of Walter Solus, where that cat is clearly making a distressed sound.
Oh, but he doesn't understand. He
Yes.
doesn't understand the viewpoints of living things, anything with a soul, because he's soulless.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can see his humanity kind of come out as he goes to friendly approach the cat. Like, we can see that he's more than his name and his reputation would really give off, but it doesn't matter because he's a fool.
yes. And now he.
even further, the cat, we cannot visually see the cat. So there are two ways to interpret this. One is to truly just represent the murder in general. They don't see it. We don't fully understand it. It kind of shows that there is no murderer. There is nothing. This is just all a series of accidents.
Very clear
accidents.
accidents.
Second off, if you listen very closely, it does kind of sound. The cat does kind of sound like Joel making cat noises. And we can further put this back to his cameo earlier in the reflection that he was actually behind the bins in a cat costume. And clearly, Walter may have felt bad because he was very clearly wrong in the head. So we went to go comfort him before being killed by Joel, who was ultimately the murderer in this film, as we can tell from context.
Oh Jesus Christ! Okay.
Isn't that right, Joel?
I didn't actually make the sound effects for the cat. I just got them off the website.
I was clearly mishearing it, but I think I'm justified enough from my long-winded explanation on that.
Okay, let's keep going. You have this shot now of the clock.
So that's
Now we
Once
can
again, going
see
back
it
to
for the first time.
motif. Passage of time, as now was dead. Walter has been killed. As his time is gone.
Yes.
Yet time moves forward either way.
Yes.
So, are we actually gonna check on the guy?
All right, here we get our first shot of Detective Henderson.
Yes.
First off, if you look past her hand, you can see that she is wearing a tie. We can take that back to before. She clearly has a soul, as we can see.
Yeah. I
She's
think
clearly a
there's-
very professional character because of the tie and the hat, and just kind of like the whole outfit. We can tell that she's very professional.
I think, but the fact that
As
she's
you know,
wearing a lot, if you consider, she's got a lot of bracelets. And
Yeah,
such.
yeah.
And I think,
From
like, the
everything,
scarf
the
over the
scarf.
jacket and such, I feel like it's almost the reverse of Walter Solus, where it kind of shows her overbearing nature. In terms of, like, the
and
clothes
she
she's
kind of
wearing.
she thinks too much about
Yes.
things because, as we know, she is the one who jumps to the conclusion. Oh, there's been a murder. There's been murder.
Yeah.
So we can really tell here that this is foreshadowing towards that.
Yeah.
Check on the guy?
She refers to him as the guy, not by Walter or Mr. Solus or whatever you would care to refer him to as, because she doesn't care.
Now we move on to Miss Riley. I think
Of course. Played
quite
by
differently to the rest of the characters who kind of wear suits or shirts or anything. She is wearing a
JJ.
dress.
Yeah, she's very Yeah, a lot more casual than the other characters.
Yes.
If we look in the background here, you can see some of the mise en scène. There is a rabbit in a mug kind of thing.
Yeah, that's actually
this
that's
scene is
symbolic. That's
it's
symbolic.
symbolic.
I'll
because,
fill in for that.
Yeah,
That is symbolic of the expression like a rabbit in a hat, like magicians, illusions, and stuff. I think that's meant to kind of play into the foreshadowing of kind of the kind of the fact that there is no murderer. That's meant to be symbolic of that.
And
That
can
makes
I ask
sense.
the
I was-
director
I
the
was-
meaning of the chicken
I-
beneath?
I like chickens.
Yeah, that's valid.
yeah. You see, when I looked at the rabbit, my first thought was Bunny Boom,
No,
and that's it.
no, it's far deeper than that. I'm quite ashamed that you think so little of me as a director.
Well, it's a nice little nod. Just like how you put yourself in the reflection. And behind that bin.
Isn't it a little rude to trespass on Mr. Solus's house?
Let's go back to the.
Mr. Solus, she clearly shows more respect. She
Yeah.
refers to him as Mr. Solus.
But as we can see, she is quite a passive character at the start, at least, where she
Yeah.
isn't wanting to kind of go with Miss Brightly's assumption. No, Detective Henderson's assumptions, and is trying to kind of deflect, if you will.
Mr. Solus's house. It's been 40 minutes. Something must have happened to him.
Now we get an indication of time, and it's quite important.
Right, 40 minutes. That is very important. They have been sitting at this table waiting for him to return for 40 minutes.
I think
So,
that
first off, that shows again how little they care about him, because 40 minutes is a long time when you really think about it. They should have gone. They're clearly going due to like moral obligation instead of actual care.
yeah.
And even then, they're not going. They're discussing going, implying that they haven't discussed it previously at all. They've only just thought of this.
I also like to think that that's enough time for someone to murder someone and get away. So like that's a good idea
That's true.
that there'd be a murderer there. And also like if you think about it, in 40 minutes, surely one of them would have walked off to go to the toilet or something. So then that also gives
I
more
was
reason for
thinking
their
the same thing.
confusion. Gives more reason
That's
for their
true.
confusion that one of them was a murderer.
Exactly.
Yes.
Very smart, Jack.
Me and
Good
my old
insight.
bandmates used to disappear for far more than 40 minutes.
So that is now the first introduction to Billy Shears, which is meant to be a play on.
Billy Shears, yes.
It's meant to be a play on Paul McCartney, if you would, and him saying, "Me and my bandmates used to disappear for far more than 40 minutes." It's a bit of intertextuality in relation to the Beatles, who were known, kind of in their later years, for drugs and LSD and such.
That's really interesting. Could you elaborate on the meaning behind the name Billy Shears?
Yes. Okay. So the name Billy Shears. I didn't want to just call him Paul McCartney, but the name Billy Shears derives from the Paul is dead theory, which says in 1966 Paul McCartney died in a car accident. In this theory, it then goes on to say that they replaced Paul with an impersonator called William Shears, otherwise known as Billy Shears. This is known through Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, where in the title song of the album, Billy Shears was referred to by name as the singer for the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Although the song that it leads on to, that is supposedly sung by Billy Shears, is sung by Ringo Starr. But in this situation, people still attribute the name to the fake Paul McCartney. So that's why I chose the name Billy Shears.
Alright, that makes sense. That's very cool. Now, if we turn our attention to the outfit itself, we can see that he is just wearing what seems to be just a black kind of jumper. Again, a lot more casual than some of the other characters, and also very simple to really just represent the fact that he is a very one-note character.
Yes. I think
He's
also
one colour, and he's one gimmick. It's very emblematic of that.
Yes. Yes.
So, who's gonna go find him?
Why me?
See, in this shot there, if we could go back slightly to the shot of all of them at the table.
So
We
who's going to
can
go find
see-
him?
Okay. We can see them all sat here. Other than Zach Strongman,
Who is now
he
about
is
to
not
be
on
revealed.
screen currently. But yeah, of course. But this is further proof that there is no murder, as we know. It can't have been any of these people because they're all here.
Yeah.
So if we ignore maybe they didn't go to the toilet at any point or go off in that 40-minute time period, but we can use this to assume that none of them committed the murder.
Yeah. Oh, I accidentally muted it. Hold on.
Why me?
And then here we can see Fred Knight's introduction. Again, not wearing a
Exactly.
tie. Quite
Not wearing a
interesting.
tie, but we can see the hat and the blazer are both black here.
Yeah.
It's a lot more together than
Yeah.
Walter Solus, as we can see. He's much more there, much more stable.
But
The
we
lack of a
also
tie shows
immediately
he's
see.
less professional than the other characters,
Yeah.
and proof by his less it's more casual, friend-like tone, not friend-like, but more casual way of speaking.
I think he's definitely the best dressed out of the cast. Would you say so?
Yeah, yes, I
Yeah.
do agree. Definitely very emblematic of his character.
Yeah.
You're the most courageous one of us all.
You're the most courageous one of us all. Okay, what can we get out of that line?
And it kind of shows Detective Henderson, as much as she's quite enthusiastic about it, she's also a little bit kind of deceitful in the fact that she's trying to deflect the responsibility of actually going to find Walter Solus onto Fred.
That's smart. That's smart.
Yeah.
None of them care about him, as we've already established. So it makes sense that they are making him go instead of doing it themselves, because they don't care.
Yeah.
Am I?
Definitely.
You can see the crazed smile there.
Oh, he's worried.
What about
She's clear. There is panic behind his eyes in that delivery.
Am I?
Let's play it again.
Definitely.
Look at that smile.
She does not. She is just trying to deflect it away from herself. She is clearly panicked and insane. This
Yeah,
is
I mean, there's almost an
foreshadowing
argument to
her.
make that.
It's careful rambling on that there has been a murder,
Yeah.
because there clearly has. It's very obvious to both us as an audience and as the character of Frankie Knight or Fred Knight. Frank Knight is the actor who portrays Fred Knight. That's my bad.
Okay.
It's very telling.
Mhm.
What about Zach Strongman? It's in his name.
Then Frankie takes a turn of deflecting.
Okay, so immediately this is great foreshadowing. Yes, we can see that they hold him up to a standard. It's in his name. His name is Zach Strongman. They're clearly putting a weight on his shoulders, kind of, as we find out later.
Yeah.
They're kind of relying on him to do it, despite his.
Why? I mean, this is far
evident
below my
lack of
expertise. I only deal with very serious stuff.
You can see
See,
there
the
more.
reveal of him being a small boy is for comedic purposes, as
Yeah.
we don't see him. When we hear the name Zach Strongman, obviously we relate it to power. We expect somebody larger
Yeah.
to be sitting there, but no. This is to throw the audience off guard and kind of get a chuckle out of them and think, oh, that's funny. His name's Strongman, and he's not strong.
But
Well,
I
maybe he
think
is strong, who
almost
knows?
the deflection there onto him, I feel like creates almost a crisis for him that does eventually lead to his death. That I feel like could have easily been avoided.
That is true, and also once again going to the kind of the cinematography itself, we can see to the left of him there is an empty chair where Miss Riley was sitting before. I think that was her name.
Yeah.
It's empty now, so
This
I
is
think
done.
that's
This is done.
metaphorical.
Yes,
somehow.
because a lot of this is absurdist. I think this is a key factor. A lot of it kind of doesn't make sense in terms of kind of the framing, but
Yeah, you
kind
have
of
to
did that
suspend your
intentionally.
disbelief.
Yeah, but this is done to kind of show Zach Strongman's isolation from the rest of the group.
Yeah.
You're the logical best option for it.
And then there you go.
Once again,
Henderson
deflecting right onto him.
taking the
He
control
was-
again.
Now, think about it. She was going towards Fred Knight at first.
Yeah.
Now, and then as soon as he says, "Oh no, he should go," she's immediately on board with that
Yeah.
because, like, "Oh, you're the logical best option." Now that somebody is making him go, she's joining in, so it's more against him.
Yeah.
So it's less against her, if it makes sense. Deflecting away from herself.
Yeah. Detective Henderson is very good from that standpoint of very much just deflecting. She has control over the conversational flow. And she's not very good. She doesn't let it go easily.
Exactly. Despite speaking the most in this scene, the focus is the least on her because of her deflection.
Yeah. She serves as an instigator through her deflection, I think.
Exactly.
Got anything to add, Jack?
No,
Yeah, you haven't done anything in a while.
I don't know what to add.
Jack, you do film studies. You should know what to add.
Fine.
You see, despite the fact that they were going towards Zach Strongman, he says fine. Anyway, he goes anyway,
Yeah.
despite the fact that they weren't focused on him at that moment.
Well, they were because
Because he's tired of their bullshit. He's tired of them not wanting to go. He wants to get it over with. He's clearly bored of the situation.
yeah,
And I can't blame him. It's been 40 minutes of just sitting at a table doing, as we can imagine, not much.
yeah,
So he just wants to get it over with. He's clearly not thrilled because, once again, they do not care about the character of Walter Sullivan.
yeah,
And now he's outside with the same framing as before, him on the right. Because this is where it changes. This is where the entire film shifts tone into something a lot more serious than it was before.
yeah,
Because there's
Jesus
been, as
Christ!
one character states, there's been a murder. Now, Jesus Christ, this means he's religious, probably.
yeah.
That-
Using the Lord's name in vain is a sin.
He is using the Lord's
And,
name
like-
in vain, because when you think about it, very casual. He very casually does this. This is a very casual phrasing.
Well, is it a casual
Once
phrase? But
again,
he has just done a murder. Let's be fair to him.
yeah, that's true. But it's, yeah, he's still a lot more of a casual character than the others.
Yeah. But
Very
he is still.
unprofessional. Once again, by the lack of a tie.
Yeah.
Tie is a very important detail. Once again, the body is not in the frame. So take that as you will. The body's off screen.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see him.
Because him dragging the body inside.
Yes.
With little care. See, if he had respect or just sense, he would have just left it there and then told them to come out and have a look. Oh, not tampering with the evidence. He brings it inside, drags it across the floor without a care in the world.
Yeah.
Because again, they don't really view him as a person. They don't view him. They don't respect him.
Yeah. I think it's,
Dragging him across the floor of what we can assume is his own home.
I think it's important to notice as well. I think there's a key point of Placebo. There are no good characters. There are slightly better characters, but there is no
Exactly.
good characters. Fred Knight, appears to us as the most logical one. And he is both the most logical, but he's still not a good person. He still
Logical
is
is not being
self-serving.
good, exactly.
He's using that logic
Because-
to almost deflect from himself for most of the time.
Speaking of deflecting, once again, Detective Henderson is clearly not a good person, trying to shift everything onto other people instead of taking any responsibility herself
Yes.
in terms of the situation. If we look at the top left of the frame, you can see somebody in the picture there. And who would that be, Joel?
That would be Zach Strongman. I think this
Zach
fir-
Strongman. So we assume that there is clearly some relation, maybe not blood relation or anything like that, between Walter Solus and Zach Strongman. Because if you really think about it, why is Zach Strongman? What makes him eligible to be at this dinner for the film premiere? We can assume that he is in some way related to Walter Solus in some way.
Yeah, and I think in
Well,
terms of
what
especially
we-
the fact that people kind of doubt him I think as well. I think that pillars into he's almost nepotist. He's
Exactly, he's insecure.
he's insecure about his nepotism.
He's got a name to live up to, sort of like what Solus
Exactly.
does, the Solus names.
Yeah,
Exactly, because the Solus it's the generational thing. He has to live up to the people who came before him, just like how Zach needs to live up to his last name. Very emblematic of the pressure that comes with heritage.
yeah.
You may pause.
Okay. I think this shot is just really good.
Oh, bloody hell.
I think that's important to
Alright.
know. Well, the
Sure.
nationalities of a lot of the characters aren't inherently brought up. I feel like with Billy Shears saying bloody hell, I think emphasises his.
I also
Ridiculous.
want to note that Zach Strongman's face is the only one covered, which signifies how
This
he
is
is
why you
next to
shouldn't
him.
smoke,
You
you
can
know.
see
This
once
happens with my
again
friend
he
George.
takes the hat off of Walter Solus's body. Once again, kind of emphasizing their relationship as characters
Yeah.
and how like they're connected in some way because he
Yeah.
takes the hat. Why would he?
Oh, bloody hell. This is why you shouldn't smoke.
And also notice how Frankie's very quick take off his hat, but I think Detective Henderson, in almost her overbearing, overthinking way, she kind of takes more time to do so.
Exactly. We can see that Riley is shocked by the scene, and we can see that through just pure visuals, Billy Shears could care less.
Well, Billy Shears does actually have a line,
Smoke, you know. This happens with my friend George.
That's a bit of intertextuality in relation to.
This happened to my friend George. He's played these games before. He knows about this situation.
Yeah. This is a reference to George
He's
Harrison,
witnessed.
another Beatle, who died of lung cancer through prolonged smoking. So.
That is smart.
So-
If we look at the lights, one of the lights is very clearly directly behind both Zach Strongman and Billy Shears, kind of showing that they are like going towards the light, kind of like that's where they're heading by the end
Yeah.
of this.
Well,
Like,
to be fair,
their
all
time
of them are
is-
heading towards the light eventually.
Well, yes, but like them, like before others, as
Yeah.
we know.
I could have taken that.
If we allow it to play a bit more,
Yeah.
we can see that their faces are covered in shadows. Once
Yeah.
again, kind of emphasizing this point.
And Zach Strongman again trying to talk about himself by saying, I could have taken that. And trying to almost defend
Exactly,
himself.
trying to build himself up towards the others, make him look better in front of the others.
Yes.
Once again, live up to his name. Very interesting character trait.
Yeah.
There's only one reasonable explanation for this.
Very
There's only
interesting
one
how.
reasonable explanation. She only
Yes.
jumps to one conclusion. She
But
does not
she-
think of any other reason.
She makes sure to preface it
She
by
thinks-
saying reasonable, and in that way she's exercising influential power over the rest of the
Yeah.
guests at the dinner party.
Exactly.
You?
You can see that every single character says "you what" almost simultaneously. Now I don't know what this means, but I think it's important to note that this is definitely not the arrangement that they were stood in over the body. We can see that before, yes, this was kind of, I mean, not the order, no, because we can see that it's kind of looped back around.
Yeah.
Because before we could see from left to right, it was Riley, Henderson, Shears, Strongman, and Knight. But now we can see that it's kind of looped around. I'm not sure why. I believe that this was probably intended in some way. But, oh well.
I
been a
believe it
murder.
shows how like right now they're all opposing Detective Henderson and her idea, so they all just sort of shifted against her. That's
Yeah.
that's what I believe.
Yeah,
the
well,
intention of it.
Also notice the music cutting
But
out
they-
to build suspense when Detective Henderson announced that there's been a murder.
There's been a murder.
We can tell by her facial expression when saying that, if we'd go back.
Yeah, I'm just going back.
She means it. She's genuine about this. She genuinely believes that there has been a murder,
Yeah.
which could. She is clearly delusional.
Yeah.
and once again, trying to take the focus towards, oh, he's dead. Someone must have done this. Someone else.
Again, yeah, she's very good at deflecting.
Exactly.
And once she says that there is the placebo sting, as it will, that plays for all the murders, which further emphasises her.
That there's
There's been a murder.
The rest of them,
And we can see right now they all
that Strongman's immediate exit, showing
Yes.
that he knows he can't live up to a situation, and he's like the most afraid,
Exactly.
by the
Yeah.
and he doesn't live up to his name.
yeah,
It shows,
panicked.
yeah,
He's
his
going on.
doubt.
He's like, nah, I'm gonna do my own thing, and he just leaves.
yeah,
There's been a
And so
murder.
far, we're not sure why. We can see his face the second that she says that. We can see he's clearly worried. He knows.
yeah,
He's panicked. It's fine if you don't get the specific frame. He's clearly very affected by this news.
There's
We
been
can
a
see that all of them
murder.
believe him, or all of them believe her. If we look at Billy Shears here exactly, if you would like to play it slightly. We can see he almost looks excited about this. Finally, the dinner's gone interesting. He finally cares like a little bit.
yeah,
He's less of because we know he did not care previously, like
Yeah.
in comparison to the other characters, who also didn't care, but he cared even less. Now something's finally happened of like note, and he immediately goes. He's clearly ecstatic about this.
yeah,
As the other characters are shocked, we can see Briley more in like I'm not sure, but Fred clearly is like disbelief because he thinks she's insane. As we
yeah. I think at this point he's still kind of playing along. I think he doesn't. I think what's important to note is that he still does kind of believe it to a point, but then when she starts getting more insistent on it, when things start cracking in her idea, I think that's when he really starts to oppose her. But I think he's kind of on board at the moment still.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do something so horrid.
Again, I think there's kind of a good use of language here from Miss Riley, which kind of shows kind of the idea of the upper class background in terms of like horrid. I think in how her delivery
Yeah,
is very quaint, very delicate.
Exactly.
That's what happened to John.
Again, more
He looks at the
intersexuality.
camera there.
Yes.
We can see that he looks at the camera, and I'm not sure what this means, but
I
it's
think this
probably
is
not-
because I think this is in terms of his intersectionality because now he's talking referencing to another Beatles member, John Lennon, who of course was tragically shot in New York, and he was
Mhm.
murdered. Whereas
rest
before,
in peace.
yeah, rest in peace. As you can see,
I'm
he's
really
kind
sorry, but my Discord lagged very slightly, and it sounded like you said New York for me. I'm sorry. Anyway, continue your point.
I think this kind of shows how he's going, where he did kind of he believes it was an accident or something that wasn't inherently murder, by the fact he referenced George Harrison, who did not die to murder, he died to lung cancer. But now he's, you know, in kind of his almost lack of care, he's immediately shifted sides to, you know, now compare this to an actual murder instead of what was
Exactly.
cancer.
His brief excitement was halted when he really thought of the situation, and if we'd also like to go back momentarily again,
Yeah.
just back
Do
to
something so
yeah.
horrid.
if we look on the wall once again, we can see Zach Strongman as well as another person. Now, does this person not look very familiar to you, John?
Yeah, it looks like you, Ned.
That's right, he's the guy from the reflection before. Once again, proving that he is a real character within the narrative.
Okay.
Now, maybe the reflection was a metaphor.
Yeah.
Because we can see he's not at the dinner, but we can see he's still very strongly like related towards the characters.
Perhaps this is someone who.
we-
Perhaps this is
He's
the
there in
person
spirit.
that related Walter Solus and Zack Strongman together, and perhaps died before the events of the film.
So perhaps like this, perhaps this has all happened before in the Solus industry,
Maybe.
and he's like a ghost
Maybe.
haunting it.
Maybe that is Walter's grandfather.
Maybe. It's not impossible.
Maybe.
That's what happened to John.
Very
Those
smart.
And you can see the music cuts out when Fred Knight talks. It's almost like he's going against the
Once again, the
situation.
intersectionality. That's why he looked at the camera, because it's in the second round.
Yeah.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
music kind of stops. It's almost he's going against the fear mongering, if you will.
Marks on him look just like ones from a cat.
Immediately actually pointing out genuine evidence, which none of the rest of the group had actually
Exactly.
factored in.
As soon as he fully looks at the body, he can immediately tell, wait, they look like a cat. They look like a cat's attacked him or something. So clearly he is a lot more logical than Detective Henderson,
Yeah.
who saw
Binary
this.
opposition.
He could have saw it and still thought that it was a murder of some kind. Which again, it could be, if my theory is true, that the cat was actually the character of Joel in a cat costume.
I think there's also a good bit of commentary there about how, in terms of like modern day, where Detective Henderson is supplying this kind of, not extremist, but kind of, how do I put this heightened sense of reality, this sensationalist, if you will, like this is a sensationalist perspective that is of course more exciting than it just being accidents, and everyone buys in to this excitement, whereas Fred Knight opposes it and is shot down.
That is awfully suspicious of you to point out, Fred.
And that's very key moment for Detective
Immediately.
Henderson.
Deflecting.
Deflecting.
She's very accusatory. of Fred.
And I think that's the first scene where
Very.
she starts to wonder if he did it.
Yeah. This is foreshadowing, of course, for their final standoff later.
Yes.
Because immediately we are sensing a kind of rivalry building between them, as she is accusatory and he is very clearly logical, not taking the blame because he knows for a fact that she's delusional in some way.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Oh, there's a murder. Whatever will we do? Shut up.
No notes there, just
And now
excellent-
we see that he's really
excellent line
mean.
delivery.
He's really mean to her. He's just really mean,
Yeah.
which I'm guessing we can assume is not exactly building her trust. Saying
Yeah.
that he's very clearly not trying to properly defend himself. He's clearly making it seem like she is being stupid, which,
Yes.
from a certain point of view, yeah, as I've said several times, she's very clearly a delusional character. But he clearly knows this by now, and instead of trying to properly reason with her, he just immediately goes to calling her stupid, which is like really mean.
Yeah, again, Placebo
It's
has
just
no
mean.
good. Placebo
Not
has no
nice.
inherently good characters.
Of course. Well, yeah.
Right,
Other
so
than
if
the
there is a
character of
murder,
Joel and the
which
cat.
there is,
Well,
Murderer,
no, because
which
he
there
committed
is.
a murder.
Again,
Murdering a bad person in some situations wouldn't matter, but in this one, it's just like a money thing. It's not like he's inherently a god awful person. So we can still assume that Joel in the cat costume is still like evil, if we assume that my theory is correct, of course.
I think it's
And once
important
again,
here
we
to
can see
note
the bunny boom in the shot.
that Detective Henderson immediately kind of is affirming her point by saying, well, if there's a murderer, which there is, there's almost feeding into Fred Knight's theory
Exactly.
about there not being a murderer, but immediately dismissing it with a certainty.
Mm-hmm. Rage
we need
baiting, as you
to
could
go
say.
around in a buddy system.
Buddy system. I think there she
We need
kind
to
of,
run in a buddy system.
again,
She shows zero trust.
yes, she's applying rules to kind of characters. She's applying to rules to the rest of the characters that aren't really based on evidence, and again, it plays into that sensationalism.
Exactly.
Billy, you go with Miss Briley. Fred, you're with me. And where's Zach?
Now, we can see here, from the buddy system kind of idea, it was never really going to work due to the odd number of characters. But she shows no care in, like, really looking at everyone, because she can clearly not tell that Zach Strongman is gone, and we can assume that the other characters didn't either.
Yeah.
But when thinking of the buddy system idea, what did she have in mind for Zach Strongman? We can assume that she would have made him go on his own kind of to understand, oh, he probably didn't do it because she shows trust. Kind of. Probably not.
Yeah,
Because
It
we
could
don't know
also
what she
perhaps
said.
show
But
like how
strong
people
again.
don't view strongman as his name.
Exactly.
Like, they're
She
shouting.
thinks, oh, he's a strong man. He'll be fine on his own. So she believes he can defend himself. Once again, building up his name.
You see, no, I think it's the opposite. I think she's saying like it couldn't have been him because he's so weak, and like he wouldn't have done the murder, so we can sort of rule him out, and he can be by himself.
I think both
You go on.
interpretations are valid.
That's kind of smart.
I think
That makes
inherently,
sense.
whatever
Yeah.
interpretation you go with, the rest of the group devalue him.
Exactly. They only see him as one thing.
He is othered, whatever happens.
Where's
Exactly.
Zach?
And if you hit now,
Except
first
we can see
instruction
he's
in
off
the
on his
kitchen.
own.
He's getting a knife.
Now, I know if you pause now, we can, Joel, if you'd like to go to some behind the scenes details of this scene, as it can
Yes.
kind of help to really build here.
So initially when we filmed this scene, Zach Strang went into the top drawer. But unfortunately, when he opened the top drawer broke when he opened it.
Mhm.
And then that required us to put the knife in the second drawer for him to open to kind of a less volatile
Yes.
response.
Because what sane person has a knife in the second to top drawer?
Yes.
That's strange. Now, obviously, of course, the characters in this are strange. Walter Solis is a strange guy, so I wouldn't put it past him. But we can note that this off-screen thing, surely to break a drawer, you would have to be a pretty strong man,
Yeah.
unless it was just already pretty broken. So this just shows how great of an actor he is, because he is suppressing the fact that he is a strong man
Yeah.
to really build up the irony. And of course, he grabbed a knife. He clearly does not have. We can't really tell yet. Let's keep it playing.
Yeah.
Maybe if I kill that killer, I can finally live up to my name.
I
Alright,
think that
so immediately this is so much because it reveals his deep internal conflict and the weight of expectation attached to his identity once again.
I think there's a lot here about
It
peer
really just
pressure.
shows exactly because his name is a symbol of strength and heroism. So he had to fully embody it in his own eyes. Like he doesn't fully see himself as a strong man. He wants to live up to it though. He has expectations of himself that he wants to truly go towards.
Yeah.
By doing this, he's trying to like vengeance. Immediately he goes towards, oh, I'm gonna kill the killer, not find it, not like expose him, kill him, because we know there's some kind of relation between his character and Walter Solis.
Yeah.
But this once again kind of builds tension. It builds relation. He's trying to get vengeance for his fallen, whatever their relation may be.
Yeah.
Wait, how do I explain this?
Then he starts to rethink his
How
plan.
do I explain? Exactly. He stumbles on his own words, showing his uncertainty. He doesn't know how
This
he's
isn't
going to
very
explain.
good.
He thinks to view him as a murder.
Yeah. And then when he's trying to determine it, he ends up tripping. He's so focused on the idea, that he ends up tripping and falling out of frame.
Exactly. And once again, we get the sting because he's dead.
Alongside a high-pitched scream. Let's get a pay on that again.
Exactly.
This
Because
isn't very
once
good.
again, the irony. His name is Zach Strongman, but a very high-pitched scream noise comes out, which we obviously assume is from him.
Yeah, it is.
Because irony. It's irony. His name is Zach Strongman, but he's screaming like a little girl.
Yeah, it is ironic.
It's ironic, exactly.
I'm just going to quickly... We're going to cut something in. How far are we in? Jesus Christ, we've
3
been
minutes.
filming for 50 minutes.
Yes. Oh my god, this is incredible.
Okay, let's keep going.
I think we found him.
I think we found him. He just assumes that they've won because somebody else has been murdered.
I think that line is in reference to where they... Because they're looking for Zach Strongman. They don't know where Zach is. And then they hear that scream.
Actually, yeah, no, that makes more sense. I forgot. Sorry, I was too focused on the other scene to really remember properly, but immediately they know that the high-pitched scream is him.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
The murder fountain. We need to go now.
Again, when the murderer isn't even brought up, Detective Henderson immediately brings it back into the situation.
Exactly. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Even with the rest of the story, I think you can look at Fred's kind of discomfort
Yes.
in this scene
I
as
think it
well.
just sort of
Exactly.
it emphasizes her delusion as well, because like they were all sort of there together, so like none of them could have been the murderer. So it's just sort of like
She immediately goes to run off, like, by herself. She clearly does not care for her own implemented buddy system. She just goes off to try and catch the murderer. Because
To
once
be fair,
again,
she does say we need to go. She does
I
want the
didn't
rest
hear
of them to go. She'll go back.
Yeah, she runs ahead anyway.
I think we found
I
him.
think the murder fountain. We need to go now.
It says we need to go.
Okay, never mind. She does tap him. She does tap his arm, really like, suggesting that to bring. Never mind.
And Miss Riley
Yeah,
also
well,
follows right after, which kind of shows almost her submission to the whole situation.
Exactly. She doesn't have a voice of her own in this situation.
And Frankie also looks incredibly uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Because obviously he knows there is no murderer.
Mm-hmm.
He knows. Like, he knows that.
And then Supple follows along as well. But it's interesting to say... Yeah, Billy Shears. I think Billy Shears also goes the opposite direction to the rest
He
of them.
does go the other way. He's clearly unsure.
Yeah. I think that
It's
kind
clearly
of
a
shows...
metaphor for how different he is.
Yeah.
Because as we know, all the other characters kind of have stronger opinions on this. He has less of a strong opinion, so he's going like a different direction mentally than the rest of them.
Yeah.
Just
And-
like how he is literally going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Because once again, he doesn't care enough.
Mm-hmm. And then we see...
He just walks.
Yeah.
He just walks. Even if someone had died, he walks because he knows, oh, there's not been a murder, so it can't be that important. So he just slowly walks behind them.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so that shows his kind of lack of care compared to the rest of the cast.
Exactly. This video feels like it's going to be us repeating the same couple things about every character, but it doesn't matter because that's the point of the video. If you're still watching, then why?
Why?
By now.
Well, you know what? Should we just we've gotten this far. Should we just watch the rest of it?
No, we're doing
No,
this
the
properly.
joke has gotten this far. I don't want to go any further. It's 50 minutes.
I think we go further. I think we go
I
further
don't
because
want
it's
to go
funny,
further.
Joel.
I don't want to go
Think-
further.
It's so funny though.
Is it?
we're
I'm
only
really
halfway.
bored.
We're only halfway. Exactly.
I know we're only
Don't
halfway.
blame-
How
I've
are
been
we
playing
only halfway?
Blast.
That's what I mean. I think
No,
we
we
should
have-
just...
We have to make it all the way through.
I'm
Come
not...
on, Joel. For content's sake.
Who's watching still?
For content's
Not
sake.
even I've been
funny.
watching and I'm in the video.
I'm bored out of my mind. I just keep looking at other things on my desk. I've been responding to people messaging me about the Instagram reels I send them. This is the joke is done by this point.
Yeah, but
Oh, you know what?
Joel,
If this video, no. Hold on. If this video gets 7 likes, we'll do a part 2 and watch the rest
No.
of the video.
Yeah,
No,
no, I
because-
back that. Okay, goodbye everyone. Happy April Fools.
No!
I'm not happy
No, why would
anymore.
you do